Well, that sucked. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R for a second Seattle Kraken loss in a row. And this time, it's a 3-0 loss to the Winnipeg Jets, which is the first time the Kraken have ever been shut out at home, so another Seattle Kraken first. Woohoo! So once again, obviously not a good first, but I guess silver lining is they're just saving all those good firsts in franchise history for later on in the season, whenever they decide to happen. And for the Kraken in this game, once again for the second game in a row, all the best parts of it for them came before the game even got started. Some of which even a couple of days before this game gets started. Mostly in the fact that the day after the Penguins loss, the Kraken were able to get their captain, Mark Giordano, off of the COVID-19 list, and he was back in action for this game against Winnipeg. Also back for the Kraken in this game after an extended stint of not playing was Calle Jarnkrok, who's off of IR, and although he was a game time decision, does end up playing for the Kraken against the Jets. Still no word on Drieger, and Colin Blackwell does end up going on the COVID-19 list as Gio comes off of it, but in general the team is healthier and better off than they were in the game against the Pens, where they were already considerably healthier than they had been during the road trip or against Edmonton. So why then does it seem like the healthier this team gets, the worse they play? Okay, maybe I shouldn't say the worse they play. They did play considerably better in this game than they did against the Penguins, but still, it's not a particularly good game for the Kraken, now having 2 games with most of their lineup back, having played much better seemingly with their better players not on the ice. I mean, I'm sure it's just a coincidence, or maybe there's something to be said for guys coming back from injury, meaning that lines have to get reshuffled up that might have been working in some of those wins. But either way, it's kind of a weird coincidence that definitely has a bit of a bad look. Finally, though, also worth noting with the lineup before we get to the game is the fact that even with the captain back, which means one less defensive spot for some of those guys that have been rotating in and out of the lineup night to night, it's Will Borgen who ends up getting the start over Fleury and Lauzon. And as far as I'm concerned, he's absolutely earned it. I was still definitely surprised to see them actually give him the start, but it was a pleasant surprise. And again, I think he's well worthy of getting this look now with the team a little bit healthier. As we get started with the game, the Kraken actually got a pretty decent number of shots off early on and had a good amount of offensive zone time. The problem being that those shots almost entirely missed the net or got blocked before getting to it, with almost no shots on goal. In fact, I think they came out of the first few minutes with just 1 to speak for it. Meanwhile, on the other end, the Jets are getting far fewer chances, but the ones they are getting, they're actually getting to the net. And then with just over 5 minutes gone in the game, Susie turns the puck over in the corner to Stastny, who finds Toninato coming in, and he shoots and scores from the slot. It's 1-0 Jets. Then a couple minutes later, a Wemberg turnover almost finds its way into the back of the net, but the shot goes full Cody Parkey, double doinking off both posts along the goal line and stays out. Whew, dodged a bullet there. And I'm not gonna lie, at this point I was definitely concerned this was gonna turn into Pittsburgh 2.0. Fortunately though, it doesn't get there, one because in the Pittsburgh game this puck absolutely would have found its way to bounce into the net, not out of it, but also because at the halfway point of the first period, the Kraken finally wake back up into this game and start to get things going back in their favor, although it does have to be said that that turnaround wouldn't really get started until after the Kraken's first power play at the halfway point of the period. It's a power play for the Kraken that looks a lot like that first power play we saw against the Penguins, in that the best chances in this power play came for the opposing team on the penalty kill, rather than the Kraken with the man advantage. The big difference here being that while the Penguins have maybe the best penalty killing unit in the entire NHL, the Jets, coming into this game, had the second worst penalty killing unit in the entire league. But while the Kraken can't get anything going 5-on-4, other than to survive their own power play, back to 5-on-5, it's Appleton on a partial breakaway against his old team, and the shot goes just wide of the net. It actually looks like he might have had Hellebuck beat here, but the puck rolls off of his stick forehand just before he can get enough of it to get it over Hellebuck's pad and into the net. Shortly thereafter, the Kraken put together a nice passing play to get it to Tanev in front of the net, who passes it across Hellebuck's pace to Gord, who just can't quite get all of it, But even still, it takes a very good play from Hellebuck to get all the way across to get his toe just barely in front of the shot by Gord to keep this one out. So you know what? Maybe the Kraken got off to a sloppy start in this game, but they do look like they pulled things together and are starting to get this game to move in their direction. And that continues to be true late into the first period as Donato gets another chance of his own and a good look in front of the net, but just fumbles the last handling of the puck a little bit too much to get the shot off on goal. In spite of all of that from Seattle though, thanks in large part to Hellebuck, as well as the Jets just playing the Kraken pretty in their face and physical, they are able to get to the locker room for the first intermission, still with the 1-0 lead. And also, luckily for Seattle, not with a power play, as late in the first, there is no question about it, an absolutely blatantly missed call on Larson as he boards a guy in the Kraken end. The ref is looking right at it, but he decides to swallow his whistle and keep things at 5-on-5. Starting off the second period, Seattle does get an early power play that does look better than the first one, but that's mostly thanks to the fact that the first power play didn't set a particularly high bar, and not because this power play was actually good, because it definitely wasn't. The Kraken were able to get a lot of time in the offensive zone with it and control the puck. The problem was they just never shot it. And since if you don't shoot the puck, you can't score goals, unless you're Pittsburgh from last game, the Kraken, once again for the second time in a row, failed to convert on a power play. The good news is that also for a second time in a row, once they're back to 5-on-5, it's Mason Appleton with more scoring chances and shots off on net. But once again, as we know, since the final score has a 0 on the Kraken side of things, he isn't able to find the back of the net against his old team, even though he had one heck of a game. Eventually, the Jets do get a power play of their own on an iffy holding call on Adam Larson. Maybe I should say more ticky-tack. It was probably technically holding, but it's definitely something you see players get away with all the time. That having been said, again, Larson did absolutely get away with one at the end of the first period, and makeups are definitely a thing in the NHL, so that could have played a role here. Either way, it really doesn't end up mattering because just seconds into the Jets' power play, Seattle draws a penalty to go to 4-on-4, in which the first good chance goes to Ehlers, who gets a grade A look that Grubauer is able to block down. Unfortunately, the puck goes right to Logan Stanley, who gets a shot off himself, but Grubauer is able to make that save too, this time catching it and freezing play with back-to-back very nice saves that definitely gets the crowd involved a bit. And then going the other way, McCann gets a good chance of his own that is shut down in front of the net before he can really get much of a shot off. The back half of the second period is pretty back and forth with both teams getting chances and shots off on goal, though I think it's fair to say that Seattle definitely had better chances. The problem was that, much like with the second period in the Pittsburgh game, while they were creating those chances, they just really were not able to consistently connect on that one last pass that they would need to turn those chances into scoring opportunities and shots on goal. And even when they were able to get the shot off on goal, the rebound never went to them, always bouncing either to a Jets player or no one in particular, but again, never a Kraken stick that could then get a follow-up shot off. So we do get to the start of the third, with the Jets still holding on to a 1-0 lead, but it wouldn't stay that way for very long into the third period, and obviously not in a good way, as we know from the final score, as just seconds into the period off of puck drop, Schwartz gets hit by a pretty obvious high stick. It's not called, and as he goes to the ice, the Jets take possession. Dunn loses his man in the defense, and a couple of passes find a wide open Kyle Connor right in the middle of the slot, and from there, with all the time in the world, a player like that isn't going to miss the net too often, and he doesn't here. It's 2-0 Jets. Now, with this play, on the one hand, everything that happens after Schwartz gets hit very obviously in the face by a Winnipeg stick should never have happened, which includes the goal. So can you blame this goal on the refs? Yeah, 100% you totally can. On the other hand, regardless of what happens before it, under no circumstances can you allow defensively a guy like Kyle Connor to be left as wide open as he is, especially in the middle of the ice right in front of the goaltender. Now, I suppose a defensive breakdown is a little bit understandable considering the chaos that just happened in the neutral zone, and that this is coming right off of a turnover caused by what should have been a penalty, but still, a guy like that is probably the one that you should be paying more attention to than the guy that draws 2 defensemen away from him. Also, although it's not what anybody wants to hear, while, again, I do think that you can blame the refs for this goal, you can't blame them for the game because, well, again, this is just one goal, and if you wanted to blame them for the game, the Kraken would have had to keep this to a 1-goal game, which obviously they didn't. Yes, being down 1-0 does feel a lot different than being down 2-0 in the third, but again, the Kraken don't end up scoring at all in this game, so I don't know that it makes a huge difference as this game goes on, especially considering the 1 goal that ends up getting scored later is also against them. And finally on this, if there do happen to be any of you Jets fans watching this who might be thinking, yeah, maybe the Jets got away with one here, but also you'll remember that the Kraken got away with one in the first period that was a pretty blatant miscall, I think we both know where the difference is. With this play, the puck ended up in the net. So you're right that both are blatantly missed calls, but that doesn't make them the same. Just a few minutes later though, the refs would call a penalty against the Kraken, because I guess you've got to even up those penalties or something. Although they don't stay that way as the game goes on, so I don't even know what they're doing at this point. The Kraken PK does do a good job of killing this one off, and then quickly after it comes to an end, Seattle does finally get a power play as Ehlers gets caught for holding the stick. And when I say caught, it's like he was begging to go to the box. He was holding onto the stick for dear life for quite a while before the refs finally decided that, yeah, okay, we gotta call this one. For the Kraken power play for the second time in a row, it is an improvement over the previous one. Though once again, it's not a particularly big improvement and the bar wasn't set particularly high, but at least this time they do get a couple of shots off. I don't know how many of them actually found the net, but at least it's better than the previous one where they just chose to pass it around in circles for 2 minutes. Same result though, as it doesn't lead to a goal, and now I think it's pretty safe to say that this power play has cooled off since that hot streak coming off of the abysmal start to the season. And a couple minutes later, they would get another crack at the power play, this time on a pretty obvious interference call on Gord as he's getting on a partial breakaway, though I have to say that I was kind of surprised they made the call, just considering the state of the game and the way that refs call it, which I think says just about everything it needs to. But either way, they make the correct call here. The Kraken go to a power play, which, although once again it does not end up converting into a goal, has to be said that this was by far the best looking power play of the night. Not just taking shots, and quite a few of them, but actually getting a number of them to the goal. Again, the problem was the same as the rest of the game for the Kraken, where they just couldn't find a way to collect a rebound and get that second opportunity to try to beat Hellebuck, who was definitely on his game tonight. And that's a dangerous thing, considering he's one of the best goaltenders in the league without a doubt. At this point, it has to be said that this last failed power play does seem to kind of take the wind out of the Kraken sails, as they really don't play with the same energy as they were earlier down the stretch in this game. Almost like they see the writing on the wall with how Hellebuck's playing, as well as the Jets' defense in front of him. Either way, with about 5 minutes left in the game, it's Appleton who makes the mistake turning the puck over in the neutral zone. The defense is caught flat-footed, which is their own fault. It's not Appleton's fault that that happens. Either way, the play allows Kyle Connor to get on a partial breakaway behind the Seattle defense. Once again, not the guy you want to be letting get those kind of chances. And once again, he makes the Kraken pay for it. His second goal of the game on his birthday makes it 3-0 Jets, where it would eventually end. So, all in all, in the end with this game, I really don't know how much more there is to say about it. Ultimately, the Kraken just get beat by a better team who was on their game tonight, especially in goal and defensively. It's honestly oddly reminiscent of that game against the Lightning that the Kraken also lost 3-0, but not just in the score. More in how the opposition played, really playing strong defensively, and in goal obviously, which always helps, but mostly just not giving the Kraken very much space to work with and not allowing them to get on those speed breakaways to create chances at the other end like we've seen them have success do, especially in Florida and some of those other wins. It's also the strategy that we saw Pittsburgh use against them in great effect a game ago. again, not giving them very much space and waiting for them to make a mistake either on a turnover or defensive lapse and then make them pay at the other end. Sure, it means that the Kraken have a lot of offensive zone time, but they aren't getting very many good looks and certainly not very many clean ones. To close things out, as far as bright spots for the Kraken in this game, again in a 3-0 loss, Appleton, again, fantastic game from him against his old team with a number of shots on goal and good scoring chances. Obviously, just not quite able to make one go. Hopefully he can change that the next time out against the Jets. I think he has a good chance of doing it if he comes in with the same energy that he did for this one. Aside from him, I also thought that Philip Grubauer had a very good game in net for Seattle. He does let in 3 goals on 33 shots, which is a good save percentage, but certainly not anything to write home about. However, when you consider where those 3 goals came from and the fact that they all were pretty wide open shots, yeah, I think that's more Winnipeg taking advantage of Seattle mistakes than Grubauer letting in goals that he should be saving, especially considering he did save a few shots from that same area. So really, this isn't a terrible game from the Kraken. It's certainly not a good one, and they do have some things to clean up, as well as they have to figure out how to play against teams that want to play them more defensively and up in their face, which they're gonna have to figure out pretty quick because with the Columbus Blue Jackets coming into town Saturday, I would expect a pretty similar game plan against the Kraken in that one. But until then, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this game down below. And as always, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below as well that help out the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and go Kraken.